This is the laser cut design coaster template. You have here on your left side an example, some instructions here, and these three colors. These three colors are important. These are the colors that the program or software that we're using on a laser cutter is able to interpret with our design. So the red or RGB red represents a cut line, so this will cut through the material. The blue, RGB blue, represents an outline, so this is a line where the laser will basically follow the path similar to a cut line but at a lesser power or lesser speed. So some of the settings have been changed on the machine where it will follow the line, but it will basically create a deep cut into it without actually sort of cutting through the whole material. So it's great for grooves within the design. And lastly, we have RGB black. This has been understood through the software to be an engrave function, so it basically converts whatever black areas that are within the design into sort of a pixel matrix, where it's sort of going through dot by dot, sort of engraving or burning the material at a much less or lower power compared to an outline or a cut to basically just create an image. So this is commonly used for wood, for example. It's quite easy to see engraved wood because it looks like burnt wood, a bit like how you might use a soldering iron or a wood burning pen. So with your design, we have a few restrictions. One of the restrictions we have is the size. So we can create a shape, so let's say an ellipse. You can see that this template has already got the preset to be millimeters, so it's easy for us to gauge our size. Now the size of your circle maximum can be 95 millimeters. I'm going to type in 95 millimeters. Before I do that, actually, if I click on this button, maintain width and height proportions, that means both the width and height will be the exact same. So if I type in 95, the bottom will also change to 95. Now it can be slightly smaller than 95, so if you check our guide, maximum of 95 by 95 or a diameter of 95 if circular. So it's the same thing here. If I wanted this to be a rectangle instead, I just need to create a rectangle. You can see there are dimensions as I'm dragging it, or I can just type in my values. Let me just get rid of that. Type in 95 by 95 millimeters. Now right now it is black, so if I wanted this to be a cut line, I will select my shapes and change the stroke or outline to 255 by 255 for R, and G and and B or green and blue will be 0. So I can drag it to the top here, and that represents 25500. We actually don't need the fill, so I'm just going to remove fill color from there. Now in my stroke, you want to make it 0.01 point. This basically tells laser to, gives it a more precise location for where the laser cuts along. You can see sometimes there are some visual glitches when we reduce sort of the stroke size to a really small size. Which is why this is usually one of the last or later steps that we might want to take. And then basically you put in your design. So let's say if I were to have just a, I'm just going to actually bring in this example that I've made. Your logo here, for example, you might bring in your logo and you might adjust a few things. So let's say my logo is quite complex. This looks a bit strange for the coaster, so I might try to remove a few things just to sort of make it fit a little better. I can reposition a few elements, remove a few elements if I find it necessary, just to simplify the design. And this is part of modifying your design or designing for this marketing hub, right? So how is your design sort of flexible enough for you to be repurposed or reworked based on the situation of the objects that we're making? You know, how are we changing it so that it fits the visual aesthetics of what we're making? So the coaster is, if you're doing a circular coaster, it's going to be more circle in design. It's also going to be relatively small or large depending on who you're asking. So this is 75 millimeters, and we can actually check the scale, 95 millimeters. We can check the scale for it by going to our sort of program on the bottom left, and we can change the scale. So 100% basically represents the real life scale at which we will see this design. Now I have my black, so that's going to be engraved, and I'm actually, for this red area, blue cup, I'm actually going to change this to a stroke. So I'm going to change the stroke, and I'm actually going to select red, so RGB red. Now I'm going to do something a bit different. So part of your task, or what you can do as part of this task, is use a combination of wood and also acrylic. So a mixture of plywood and colored acrylic. So my plan for this is the outline is going to be, or the main form of it is going to be wood. So I'm going to have 2 layers of wood, one which is just a circle base, just to sit down at the bottom, maybe 2 or 3 mil ply, and then the other with the design on it. Now in this design, I'm going to cut out the center. What I'm using or doing with the center is I'm going to inlay it, or put inside of it, the acrylic design or the acrylic material. And for this one, because it is quite small and it would make it a bit more challenging, I'm just going to resize this and bring my other elements above to the top. So maybe something like that. I'm not too fussed about the design of it at the moment. It's more of just a little demonstration. Let me just put that there. Not a huge fan of it, how it looks, but we'll leave it as there for now. So yeah, if I wanted this to be sort of inlaid, or a the acrylic that I can sort of insert and slide it in, I could then cut this out in blue acrylic. So it'll cut the pieces out, it'll cut a gap or cavity from this circle coaster design, which I can then put these blue acrylic pieces into that slot. And that's sort of gives it a bit more of a more interesting dynamic look to the whole design. And of course I have to have another circle just to represent the base. So the base is going to be plywood, it's got the design, has a cavity which the blue sort of acrylic pieces sit inside. And then just making sure my red lines are all 0.01. I can then save my design. Oops, gotta change these two. I can then save my designs and upload this to Canvas for your teacher to print, or for you to print it yourself at the laser cutter.